Another week, another round of promises, delays, and cold calculations. Germany is still undecided on Taurus missiles. Trump says, "We'll see." The US reroutes missiles to the Middle East, and Ukrainian skies remain dangerously open. Meanwhile, Azerbaijan stares down the Kremlin shadow games. And on Ukraine's front line, the death toll climbs city by city, hour by hour. We've got a lot to unpack, so stay with us. This is The Gaze. Don't forget to follow our website, YouTube, and socials for more sharp takes and frontline reporting. Some issues just appear to be eternally open, I guess. One of such is an issue of supplying German Taurus cruise missiles to Ukraine that still, as of now, remains open. That is stated not only here, but also by German Chancellor Friedrich Merz.
It has always been clear that if we supply Taurus missiles, it will not be German soldiers who will use them, but Ukrainian soldiers. By the way, the same is true for other cruise missiles supplied by the UK or France. The problem for us lies in the fact that this system is extremely complex, and to train soldiers in its use takes at least half a year. We will no longer publicly discuss what weapons we supply or what we do to support Ukraine militarily, because I want Putin to maintain some uncertainty about our actions in the military sphere. Only one thing is certain: Germany will not become a belligerent party in this war.
I just mathematically wonder here, if it takes 6 months to learn how to use very complex Taurus missiles, and the war in Ukraine is onwards for 3.5 years, and Ukraine have been asking for Taurus for all 3 years, so if my calculations are correct, if Germany would have been given Tauruses back then, 3.5 years ago, Ukrainian soldiers could have become 7 times more experienced in Taurus use by now than German soldiers, who never used Taurus in actual combat, still are today. Odd times we're living in, are we not? Nevertheless, Ukraine will set up new weapons production factories together with the partners of the Ramstein format. This was announced by Defense Minister Rustem Umerov. He reported on the special legal and tax regime for Ukrainian manufacturers of weapons and military equipment, which will allow them to quickly renew and expand production. The facilities will be located both in Ukraine and in the Ramstein Group member countries.
All the armament produced at these factories will be destined for our defense forces until the end of the war. This is a new type of cooperation in the military-industrial sphere, in which Ukraine is an equal partner and a player on the world defense market. Rustem Umerov, Minister of Defense of Ukraine.
Taking part in the NATO summit in The Hague last week, Donald Trump did not rule out the possibility of continued US military assistance to Ukraine. We'll see how it goes, was the US president's brief response to reporters' questions about continuing US military aid to Kyiv during the final press conference on the summit. Whatever that means, Trump didn't rule out the possibility, even though, in his words, this weaponry is also needed by the US itself. Perhaps that's why the Pentagon chief Hexet has halted already approved Patriot air defense missile supplies to Ukraine lately, according to some media. Yes or no, either way, the bare fact is, since the beginning of Trump's second term, Russia has increased both the number and intensity of airstrikes against Ukraine dramatically. And the lack of air defense will simply leave Ukrainian cities completely defenseless. And no matter what Trump or Hexet or anyone else thinks about the fact that today's American administration would have to choose what a history will hold them accountable for, either saving Ukrainian civilians and children or letting them perish under Russian terror, as simple as that. Prior to the joint Israeli-US operation against nuclear facilities in Iran, Washington delivered some 20,000 missiles originally intended for Ukraine to the Middle East. Now, the delivery of Patriot air defense systems also faces uncertainty. Of the 7 promised by NATO allies, Ukraine has received only 4. Moreover, reports of a possible shipment from Israel now have been denied, and it is unclear whether it was the full system that was not delivered or just interceptor missiles, analysts say. The US remains a major individual donor of aid to Ukraine, but the volume of already allocated packages during the Biden administration could dry up already by the summer of 2025. And that is now, writes the Ukrainian pub New Voice. The article states that the consequences of US aid ending will not be catastrophic, but they will jeopardize the defense forces' capabilities in the medium term. And while America indeed remains the largest individual donor, Europe's total aid is larger, analysts say. But there is a secret to that. A secret that is not a secret, really, and here it is anyway. Of the $115 billion provided by the US, 90% is invested in American-owned military industry and stays in the USA, literally invested in American economy. The largest assistance to Ukraine came at the end of 2024, with $26.9 billion in the last months of Biden's term. It is a fact, Ukraine is heavily dependent on US weaponry. 86 of all rocket systems, 82 of artillery ammo, and 70 of Patriot systems came from the US. But Ukraine is not the only country that faces Russian hostile actions against its sovereignty these days. Azerbaijan is under pressure in a hybrid way. Russian security forces carried out a brutal raid against the Azerbaijani diaspora in Yekaterinburg that left 2 people dead, prompting a harsh reaction from official Azerbaijan and an escalation of the conflict between the countries. Indeed, things got escalated. In retaliation, Azerbaijan conducts its own raid against Russian propaganda TV hosts in response to Russia's actions, not hesitating to further strain the relations. Members of the Sputnik Azerbaijan Russian propaganda TV channel were arrested. Some of them are accused of being FSB agents, working to undermine Azerbaijani national security.
Це вас так хвилює?
Think about it. Have you ever thought about the sovereignty of the people which Russia has forced into its territory? Whether it was the time of the Tsarist Russia or the time of the Soviet Union. Azerbaijanis, Uzbeks, Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, Turkmens and representatives of other nations have always been accepted as second-class people.
Think about it. Have you ever thought about the sovereignty of the people which Russia has forced into its territory? Whether it was the time of Tsar Russia or the time of the Soviet Union, was a Russian people. Azerbaijanis, Uzbeks, Kazakhs, Kyrgyz, Turkmens, and representatives of other nations have always been accepted as a second-class people. So, mutual Russian-Azerbaijani raids and diplomatic activity cancellations is onwards. Looks like Azerbaijan will not tolerate any pressure from the side of the all-powerful hegemonic Big Brother. Why would it? Azerbaijan itself became quite a regional power and has something to say and do about Russian hybrid aggression. Russia has lost 1.22 million in military personnel since the beginning of Putin's criminal adventure, full-scale invasion of Ukraine. In the last 24 hours alone, the defense forces eliminated 1,110 Russian occupants. In addition, the Ukrainian armed forces managed to destroy 2 tanks, 3 armored vehicles, 40 Russian artillery pieces, and an air defense system. Ukrainian defenders also shot down 73 drones and sent 90 Russian military vehicles out of game. A hospital in Kherson came under Russian artillery fire the night before last. According to the Kherson Regional Military Administration, 5 patients and 3 nurses were wounded. One of the hospital workers was hospitalized with a blast injury, concussion and a shrapnel wound to the chest. 2 others were receiving medical care on the outpatient basis. Patients also suffered blast trauma, concussions and shrapnel wounds. The hospital building was severely damaged. Russian forces carried out a drone attack on the Dnipro region. A private company in the city of Kryvyi Rih and a farm in a nearby district were damaged. In the town of Pokrovsk, a residential area, as well as a private housing area, a garage and a construction company were hit. Power outages occur all over. A 69-year-old woman was injured, reports the head of the regional military administration. According to him, 8 Russian drones were shot down over the Dnipro region. In June, Kharkiv won itself a grim record. The city suffered the highest number of attacks since the beginning of the full-scale Russian invasion. Mayor of the city reports about it as the Russian army continued its terror. attacking the city with missiles, drones, and glide bombs. As a result, in June, 15 people in Kharkiv were killed and more than 150 wounded, including 25 children. The most intense terrorist attack took place on the 7th of June, when the Russians completely destroyed a civilian enterprise. 6 workers died under the rubble. During the night, Russian drones attacked Kharkiv and the region, as the State Emergency Service of Ukraine confirms. A drone hit an abandoned building in Kharkiv. The debris damaged a car service workshop, an apartment building, an administrative building, and a public transport stop. No injuries were reported. In the town of Kupiansk, in the Kharkiv region, Russian drones fell on the premises of 2 farms, setting it ablaze. What is known so far is that 3 people were injured. This night, the Russian army also attacked Odessa, and also UAVs killed 2 people. According to the State Emergency Service, a Russian drone hit a high-rise residential block. There was a fire observed on several floors. 5 people were rescued, among them a child. After extinguishing the fire, rescuers extracted the bodies of the spouses from under the rubble. Also, 2 injured children, a 7-year-old boy and a 3-year-old toddler, were hospitalized, as well as 4 adults in a state of average severity. The European Union is preparing to adopt the 18th package of sanctions against Russia. According to Reuters, the document could be approved in the coming weeks. In particular, the German government is urging EU countries to intensify work on restrictive measures against Moscow. New sanctions could affect the energy sector and the Russian military-industrial complex. More details in our report.
Ukraine can still win. That's the headline of a new article in Foreign Affairs. According to experts, Western sanctions have made it harder for Moscow to wage war, and further decisive action could bring it to an end. Analysts from the Institute for the Study of War noted that while the Kremlin is trying to ramp up production of military aircraft, this process is hindered by international restrictions. Russia's defense industry faces shortages of both components and skilled labor. To further complicate the Russian dictator's war efforts, Germany is urging EU member states to approve an 18th package of sanctions against Russia. Putin must understand that his aggression will not go unanswered, stressed Germany's foreign minister.
You are absolutely right. Pressure on Russia must be increased. We are grateful for your willingness because Russia is delaying the process, and we cannot accept that. We want to convince all our European partners and our American colleagues of the need for effective sanctions pressure.
All 27 EU member states must agree in order for the 18th package of sanctions against Russia to be approved. However, Hungary, led by Prime Minister Viktor Orban, continues to oppose the move. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has called on Germany to influence Hungary's stance, emphasizing that the main aim of the sanctions is to restrict the financial flows Russia relies on to fund its war against Ukraine.
I know there are some misunderstandings with official Budapest. From our side, we are appealing to Germany, as leaders of Europe, to engage in dialogue with Hungary. I believe it's in the interest of all Europe to ensure that sanctions packages against Russian aggression are effective. Russia must feel the high cost of this war, and its economy should suffer as a result. Naturally, this will lead to a reduction in the money allocated to wage war.
The 18th sanctions package against the Kremlin could be approved as early as next week. This was stated by Denmark's representative to the EU, ahead of the country assuming the presidency of the Council of the European Union. According to Radio Free Europe, the new sanctions will target Russia's energy revenues and its defense industrial complex. Companies linked to Russia's so-called shadow fleet may also be added to the blacklist. Additionally, the EU is proposing to lower the price cap on Russian oil from $60 to $45 per barrel.
As you know, we've been working on the 18th sanctions package in recent weeks. We had hoped to reach an agreement during the last European Council meeting, but that didn't happen. I believe we can reach consensus on this, including gas-related measures, next week. Carsten Grønbæk Jensen, Denmark's representative to the EU during a meeting with journalists.
In addition to preparing the new sanctions package, the European Union has officially extended its sectoral restrictions against Russia until 2026. These measures were first introduced in 2014 and significantly expanded in 2022 after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs, Kaja Kallas, emphasised that pressure on Russia will continue until it ends its war against Ukraine.
The EU today officially agreed to extend sectoral sanctions on Russia. We will continue to pile pressure on Moscow to end its war in Ukraine. Each sanction weakens Russia's ability to wage war. Kaja Kallas, EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, on X social network.
Meanwhile, the United States is also working on new restrictive measures. Since April, a draft bill has been sitting in the US Senate that would impose a 500% tariff on countries that purchase oil from the aggressor state. According to Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, 84 out of 100 senators are ready to vote in favor of the bill. He also noted that former President Donald Trump supports the proposal. Reported by Nikita Skoblikov, UATV News.
As Ukraine builds and Russia strikes, the West hesitates. How many delays can freedom afford? And when will Germany finally send Taurus missiles? Drop your thoughts in the comments and stay tuned for more, right here on The Gaze.